The Cult of the End, The Horrors of Aum Shinrikyo. The Subway Attack, March 20th, 1995. Tokyo, morning rush hour. 5 men stepped onto different trains along 3 subway lines, each carrying plastic bags filled with liquid sarin. Each man carried a sharpened umbrella. The trains were packed, men in suits, women in office attire, students clutching school books. Thousands of people crammed shoulder to shoulder, breathing in the same air. Then, at the exact same moment, across 3 subway lines, 5 bags were dropped. 5 umbrellas struck, plastic ripped, liquid turned to gas, no alarms, no gunshots, no warning. At first, there was only silence, then came the coughing, then the screaming. Sarin is invisible, it has no scent. By the time passengers realized something was wrong, the gas was already burning their eyes, searing their lungs. Some collapsed instantly, their nervous systems shutting down in seconds. Others staggered, clawing at their throats, vomiting as their muscles convulsed. The gas spread through tunnels, seeped into other trains. Panic swept the city. Ambulances clogged the streets. Bodies lay on the platforms, faces twisted in agony, mouths open but unable to breathe. By the time it was over, 13 people were dead. Over 6,000 were injured. Thousands more would suffer from long-term health effects. And Japan, a nation that prided itself on order and safety, was left shaking. Obedience was absolute in Aum Shinrikyo. Doubt was treason. And punishment for treason was grotesque. Asahara claimed his blood held divine properties. Devoted followers were made to drink it, believing it would bring them closer to enlightenment. He also bathed in large tubs, and the water, filthy, stagnant, was bottled and distributed among members, forced to consume it as a sacred sacrament. For those who hesitated, there were harsher punishments. Cultists were sealed in isolation chambers, deprived of food, water, and sleep until their minds cracked. Some were injected with drugs to induce near-death experiences, told they had to suffer to reach salvation. Others were strapped to electrical devices, their bodies writhing as they were purified through shock therapy. And if that wasn't enough, they were executed. Some were drowned. Some were suffocated. Some were injected with potassium chloride, their hearts seizing within moments. The prophet of death. His name was Shoko Asahara. Born Chizuo Matsumoto in 1955, he was blind in one eye, half-sighted in the other. A man who had always seen himself as special. He grew up poor, shuffled into a school for the blind, where he learned early that dominance came to those willing to take it. His classmates later recalled him as a bully, extorting money, controlling the weak. When he left school, he tried his hand at medicine, law, even politics, but he failed. And then, in the 1980s, he found something new. Faith, or at least the illusion of it. He opened a small yoga and meditation studio, but he didn't just teach breathing techniques. He promised something more: enlightenment, power, the ability to control the world itself. And slowly, the desperate and the curious came to him. At first, it was spiritual seekers, then students, then scientists, doctors, engineers, people with the knowledge to build things, dangerous things. And Asahara gave them something to believe in. He told them he was Christ, the final Buddha, the one true prophet destined to lead his followers through the apocalypse. And that apocalypse, it was coming soon. The world, he said, was corrupt, poisoned by materialism, science, and false gods. The weak would perish, and only Aum Shinrikyo would survive. The cult would become a divine army, rising from the ashes of humanity, and when the world refused to end on its own, Aum would help it along. Science and death. Aum Shinrikyo wasn't just a cult, it was an army, a laboratory, a terrorist organization hiding behind the veil of religion. Unlike other Doomsday sects, Aum didn't just pray for the apocalypse, they built it. Inside secret bioweapons labs, scientists who once worked for Japan's top universities were engineering weapons for Asahara's divine war. Anthrax was tested in the streets of Tokyo, sprayed from rooftops. Botulinum toxin was cultivated, capable of paralyzing and killing in microscopic doses. Sarin gas, the same nerve agent used in war, was being produced on an industrial scale. They even attempted to obtain Ebola, sending cult members to Africa under the guise of humanitarian work, hoping to bring back samples. And as the cult's paranoia deepened, they started testing their weapons on their own members. Those who questioned Asahara, those who wavered in their faith, were dragged to underground chambers. Some were injected with poison, electrocuted, or suffocated in gas experiments. Others simply disappeared, but small tests weren't enough. Aum wanted mass death. The cult falls, but the darkness remains. The government hunted Aum down. Their compounds were raided, labs were torn apart. Weapon stockpiles were found, gas, chemicals, enough to kill tens of thousands. Asahara was captured, dragged from a small hideout where he had been cowering in silence. His followers? They tried to deny it, tried to say they had been misled. But the evidence was there. The recordings, the weapons, the bodies. Aum hadn't been about salvation. It had never been about enlightenment. It had been about death. In 2004, Asahara was sentenced to death by hanging. His most devoted followers, 12 in total, were also sentenced to death. And yet, even now, years later, Aum has not fully died. Rebranded under different names, fragments of the cult still exist, still operate in the shadows. New members still join, drawn in by the promise of power, by the whispers of old prophecies. Aum Shinrikyo was exposed, but the ideology it spread, the belief that the world must be purged to be reborn, has never truly gone away. Because Aum wasn't just a cult, it was a warning, a reminder that sometimes belief doesn't just inspire, it kills. That's it for today's true crime story. What do you think? Was there more to the story, or did we uncover all the pieces? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.